Alright, guys, so I'm going to be doing another comic review, another book sent to me by my friend Chris. Thank you as always, brother. And today we're going to be talking about Spider-Man Shadow of the Green Goblin. This is one of those lost tales kind of comics. This was written by J.M. DeMatteis with artwork by Michael Maria. Hope I'm saying that name right. And yeah, so like I said, this is one of those Lost Eras book, but also it covers a plot line that was never really touched on until now of Peter Parker's Spider-Man issue -1. Basically, those are like Lost Tales kind of comics, and it was something DeMatteis. Is it DeMatteis or DeMatteis? Because I've heard it said both ways, and I've never met the guy, so I can never pronounce his last name. So it's J.M. DeMatteis or DeMatteis. I've heard it pronounced both ways. Anyway, so J.M. DeMatteis wrote that story involving the Proto-Goblin. And in there, the Proto-Goblin was Norman Osborn's experiment he did to perfect the Goblin formula. And essentially what it did was basically alter this poor guy named Miles Van Adder, who became this big little red Hulk monster. In that story, it's set before Peter ever met the Goblin, the Green Goblin, and it actually focused on a younger George Stacy. And in that comic, Niles survived the whole event. Anyway, so Shadow of the Green Goblin picks up on that plot point and is told by Spider-Man, who's like compiled all this information and stuff like that, and he's trying to like tell this story the best he can. So in this comic, this is set in two different specific time points, and I'll get to one in a moment. But basically, this comic is set a month after Ben Parker's death, and Peter's still like learning how to be Spider-Man. He's still like trying to like deal with how strong he is now, and also like dealing with the grief that he still feels, as well as like Aunt May, who is basically like also dealing with her own depression. And the two haven't really talked about it, per se. They haven't really talked or gotten to really, like, sit down and talk about Ben's death. They're just kind of wrapped up in their own lives. Yeah. And on top of that, Proto-Goblin is trying to get his family back and also, reverse the mutation Norman put on him. And he comes upon someone who he thinks can help him. That person is Emily Osborn, the ex-wife of Norman Osborn, who wants Harry back. So, for those who know your deep Spider-Man lore, you know that Peter didn't meet Gwen or Harry until his college years. But this basically retcons, saying that, oh no, he met them as Peter Parker in college, but encountered them as Spider-Man in the early in his early years. Which I think is kind of a stretch, because don't you think, like, even still, he's like, oh, that's Harry Osborn. I met him he doesn't know it, but I met him as Spider-Man. I've always kind of found that was, like, I was like, all right, DeMatteis. The other thing, too, is that DeMatteis really also knows his continuity. And actually, a lot of the dialogue feels like classic 1960s Spider-Man. Like, this could have easily, and I don't know if that's going to help or hurt some of the, reading for this, but it's definitely going to have it's definitely helps with the feeling of the comic. I think there is some solid, there is some definitely, like, again, it feels like 80s Spider-Man is talking about 60s Spider-Man. So you can see like how good DeMatteis is at telling these kind of at telling like how phonetic he can be with both dialogue. What was I gonna say? So, yeah. I also like how he plays with canon a bit, and he does tell a whole story, even though, for this, it's a 4-issue miniseries. But it does kind of feel like it rushed to the end. And also, if you know your DeMatteis, if you know your J.M. DeMatteis Spider-Man run, you know it can be pretty depressing. And I can assure you, it's pretty depressing here as well. This is not a fun book. This is a, like, emotionally beat-down book. That happens. Yeah, and it covers the whole point of what happened to the Proto-Goblin after Spider-Man and -1. which is a plot, like, again, it was been over 30 years since we've talked about this, and it's also, like, you know, Harry's relationship with his father, also delves into Emily Osborne, who... Emily Osborne is an interesting character, because, like, they can never really decide if they want to make her alive, like, keep that character alive or not. Like, it always feels like Spider-Man editorial can't get their shit together, but then again, that's Spider-Man editorial on a whole. And like I was saying, remember when I said, like, this is 80s, early 90s Spider-Man? Yeah, this is, DeMatteis is writing it like it's not, like, 80s Spider-Man, 80s, 90s Spider-Man era. Well, the reason being is because he throws out a line saying that Aunt May is dead, in the present time of which this comic is taking place. So, which, yeah, if you guys remember, she didn't die. It was Norman Osborn, kidnapped Aunt May and replaced her with this actress who got really in depth with her role and then died. Yeah, it was really fucking stupid. And here DeMatteis is just basically saying, no, she's dead. Like, I wrote that. She's 100% dead. Yeah, which I feel like for all of us that would have been a much better story. But yeah. The comic's pretty solid, but it's such an obscure storyline. It really does, that's really what's going to make or break it for you, is that this is such an obscure storyline. Like I said, who really remembers the Proto-Goblin from one issue? And he never met Peter in that story. You know, that was all George Stacy. But if you love, like, classic Spider-Man with, like, an 80s edge, here you go. I would recommend it, but again, this is like some niche Spider-Man run. This is a very niche Spider-Man story, and I do stress niche. And it does not end fun. There's also another J.M. DeMatteis. There's like two J.M. DeMatteis Spider-Man Lost Tales I really want to read. One being Spider-Man: The Grim Hunt, which is like a sequel, like DeMatteis's long-lost sequel to Kraven's Last Hunt, and Ben Reilly Spider-Man, which is a Lost Era story of like storyline with when Ben Reilly was Spider-Man. I'd like to read those at some point. But yeah, like I said, if you are a diehard this is like for a comic for a diehard Spider-Man fan. And yeah, but again, it's also niche, so I got to remember that. But it is really good. I will say the artwork, though, is what kind of hurts this book, because it feels like everyone's faces change every issue, and it doesn't look, and it feels like they couldn't figure out how to draw Peter and Aunt May, especially. And again, like with Proto-Goblin, why he keeps looking different is because he's like dissolving, so that one, I can forgive that, but like, for the most part, the artwork is really like all over the place in some pages. Anyway, so you guys tell me in the comments below if you've read Spider-Man Shadow of the Green Goblin. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of it. Chris, thank you once again, brother, for this. And other than that, I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in Multiverse.